Wednesday. I'm Russ Kane. This is Men's Radio Station. Of course, this is the Daily Show on every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday. What a show we have for you today. Absolutely humongously packed. Mahusive, right? Mahusive. A word, I don't know if it's real, but I like it. What the hell? Right. I'm going to bring on our first guest. I'm not even going to wait. I've no idea where Neil Long is. I fired him. He was useless. I never liked him. Scruffy bastard. Right. Tosh Britton. Hello, Tosh. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
I can hear you, love. We can hear you loud and clear. Stop whispering like you're in a church or something. We can hear you perfectly well. Tosh, can you hear us? No, you've not said right. This is going terribly, terribly well. Tosh, come on. No idea what's going on there. Right. Okay. Good day, folks. Let's go to the northeastern United States. No idea where Neil Long is. It's gone 12. I fired him. Good day, folks. Northeastern United States. How was yesterday's your Valentine's Day? What a load of old crap that is. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Did you manage to get to the garage and buy those wilted kind of ghastly little flowers? And you go, hello, dear, I really love you. And that's it. That's how you do. Oh, thanks for turning up. How good of you. Thank you so much for turning up, Neil. That's great.
Greetings.
Yes, thank you for turning up, Neil. Very sweet of you.
I'm sorry about that. I had a slight internet problem.
You'll find the show starts at 12 on the dot, my friend. That's when it starts. Let's bring on your guest who can't hear us, or I don't know what she's doing.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. We could hear you before, but she was whispering like we couldn't see her. Hello, Tosh Britton.
I'm so sorry.
Absolutely no idea what you're doing.
We're starting with apologies. I have a slight internet problem. Good morning to the lovely Tosh Britton.
Right, you've arranged this, Neil. I know absolutely nothing about Tosh Britton apart from I love the name.
Oh.
Well, you were on before, weren't you, Tosh? We had you on before, and you told us that you were writing a book. And it was just serendipitous today because we're starting a new feature on Men's Radio, 12:30 today, a legal section. And we're kicking off this legal section, legal questions and answers, with a lovely lady talking all about divorce. And you have written
Not
a
sure
book
in 2023 you can say lovely lady. It's probably sexist bullshit. Yeah, just thinking. That's probably what it is.
A
woman. You can say a woman who is charming and talented. I don't think we can say lovely lady anymore, although she is lovely because I met her. She's great. Carry on.
Okay, thank you very much indeed about that. Apologies if I've offended anybody woke, but I'm just doing me. I'm just being me. Take me or leave me.
We love that. We love you.
And you've written a book about divorce, and we're kicking off with the subject of divorce on the legal bit later on today, with someone of the female persuasion who is nice. And what
identifies as a woman.
What's unique about you, because I've met you, is you kind of you went through a divorce yourself, didn't you? And it was just total kindness towards the other party.
Blimey.
And that
I know.
What's the matter with you, Tosh?
And
it's a little experiment.
Didn't you win for everything that's worth?
Gave birth to your, for want of a better way of putting it, body of work that's out in the world now, including this new book.
It is. So this is my book, Kindness for Conflict.
Kindness for Conflict.
There we go.
Okay.
So my story really is, and you were saying, why did you decide on the conflict, on the kindness thing, was because I had two friends who are lawyers. They were corporate lawyers, and they just said, you've got to go and get in for everything you can. And I'm a child of divorced parents as well. And my parents don't speak to each other 35, 40 years later. So it's all problematic.
Talk about carrying a grudge.
I know. Yeah. And I just kind of decided I was going to do it differently. And when they said to me, you've got to go to court, go and do this, go and do that, I just had this massive rock in my stomach. And I was one of those maybe light bulb moments when you just think, do I want to feel like this for the next few months, possibly years? And I just had this moment where I just thought, I'm just going to be really kind and see what happens. I'm going to use it, see my divorce as an experiment in kindness, change the way I do divorce, step outside of my comfort zone and do the work to help me get to that place to be able to do it. and hopefully somewhere make the difference. And then in 2014, there was a moment where we couldn't pay our rent, we couldn't sell our house, and we were like, it was just
horrible.
Financial horror.
It was a horror show.
It was a horror show, and I just thought, I'm going to sit down. And I thought, I'm just going to sit and excuse me, a horror
And
show.
cough.
Coughing.
You're going to sit and cough. That was it. Coughing and Kindness. That's your next book.
Coughing and Kindness. But I just thought, I'm just going to start blogging and start speaking, and just see what happens. Because there must be other people feeling the way I'm feeling and not knowing what to do. And that's why I decided to write this book and blog and do my podcast. And I'm a divorce coach, so I work with lots of
Tosh, how did your husband feel about all this?
I think he was relieved. I remember seeing his face change. Something sort of dropped in front of his eyes. I think it was disbelief or something.
Yeah.
And I just said, listen, why are we paying to be unkind to each other? Have we not already just had this time where, you know, you've kind of argued or disagreed or whatever it is, towards the end of your relationship and your marriage? Why would you then ramp up and pay for it? And everybody, particularly your children, if you have children, be in the center of it, and it continues. And something I always ask everybody is, do you want to be that, you know, have you met that person who 5 years down the line, 10 years, 20 years down the line, who has said to you, who you mentioned divorce, and you just feel this thing off them, and it's just like this internal rage. And I just say to people, do you want to feel like that? And they go, no, hell no, of course I don't want to feel like that.
I bet some people have never considered, Tosh, that they actually have a choice, because we've been so, I suppose, conditioned, particularly on the images we get from what we imagine America to be like, you know, these vicious divorce settlements played out in the public arena. It's almost like, you know, modern day bull baiting, isn't it? For goodness sake. You know,
well, it's money making. It's rinsing the money. I mean, the whole thing about most lawyers and anyone who's dealt with lawyers, which is why I'm so enthusiastic about our new 12:30 slot on Wednesdays, their aim is not conflict resolution. Their aim is to extend those. I know, I studied law for over 5 years, worked in a West End practice. Your aim is to extend those billing hours as far as humanly possible. That's the deal.
But you diffused it by saying we don't have to pay for this, and in doing that, you pioneered a new way. I mean, I'll go as far as calling it a new paradigm. What, being nice through divorce, and so when your ex-husband had this realization, and if you like, the scales dropped from his eyes, did the energy sort of just change straight away, or was it more of a process? Did he find it easy to believe that you really meant it, that you were just going to play it nicely?
Yeah, I just think, I wrote it down, and I just gave him a piece of paper, and I just said, listen, I commit to being kind. I commit to, and this is kind of one of the sort of pillars of my, you know, the work I do now, coaching, is the fact that actually you set an intention, you know, and we have all been conditioned to think there is only one way, and that is a battlefield. So it's perhaps not using those words like battle.
And Tosh, remind me, were children involved? Like
yes.
I lost the plot. So children were involved. How old were they when this was going on? Were they
7 and 9.
Oh, so they were tiny. They were tots.
Yeah.
So they were babies, basically. Very, very difficult. You were the only person I've ever spoken to, ever, who's tried this approach. Because the normal approach is when it all goes horrible and heads south, everybody gets their armor on and gets their legal team on and tries to beat the living crap out of each other and rinse every last penny.
And interestingly, people were ready for it. People were ready for it. The world was ready for it. So you are absolutely right to think there might be other people thinking in that way. And your blog was your podcast was really successful, wasn't it? Because I remember I approached you and I said, I do podcasting, and you're like, in the sense that I can help you get your podcast on air, and you're like, well, already done that, and you showed me your figures. I'm like, oh, so it's
Just going to read. I'm going to read this
It was
out
well
if I can,
received,
Tosh.
wasn't
Let me read
Thank
this
you.
out because on another radio station which takes our stream, they're only hearing us, Tosh. They're not seeing us. The catalyst
Okay.
to acrimonious divorces and psychological impact on kids is the conflict of interest with family court lawyers and solicitors, said Paul Endicott, who has a fantastic operation
Thank
in
you,
London.
Paul.
Yeah.
Can
sure.
I just say something? I feel there is a real there's a real sea tide, whatever you want to call it, of change with lawyers, and I'm really fortunate to work with. And I know Paul as well. I think I met Paul last summer, but there is a real sea of change with lawyers committing to a better kind of process, and I think with anything. I love that Margaret Mead quote, it's only a small group of people that starts making a difference. But if you commit to it and you believe in something, you believe in a kinder way forward. It's like, why can we not believe that we can do it? Why are we in our heads? Why are we trusting in something other than what feels right for you? And it really takes me back to that first feeling of that rock in my belly and thinking, do I want to feel like this forever? And I think the more people,
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, sorry, you finish what you were saying first. Sorry,
and I think the more people, thank you. I think the more people who sign up and commit, people will see it. And do you know what? I had this amazing lawyer who's a real game changer lawyer. He's known as the International Lawyer on Instagram. And he wrote me the most amazing, just like write up on my work and being a thought changer for a number of years. So I think the legal professional, there are people who are really beginning to pay attention, and hopefully this book, and he said everybody involved in the whole divorce thing, no matter where, should read this book. And I've had a really big charity as well endorse it as well, Only Mums and Only Dads. So it really is, I think the more people that are on board, the more people that commit, the greater chance we have of being able to
and putting
change
more lawyers
something.
out of work.
Being more enlightened human beings, because I mean, let's face it, if you're battling on the battlefield or battling in the boardroom or battling in the courtroom, it's still a war. It's still the essence of a war, isn't it? And the idea of, and I must admit, if I'd have heard your philosophy possibly in my 20s, I would have gone, oh yeah, right. Because this is when I was watching the Jerry Springer show and all that. Jerry. Yeah, exactly.
It was mad,
which was entertaining for all the wrong reasons. I say to myself, it
I
was on
love
stage.
that show.
I don't have to feel quite so guilty about watching it.
I actually met
I met
Jerry Springer, and I couldn't help myself by going, Jerry.
Did you actually?
He was charming.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't have believed it, but now I do. And after
I don't.
met,
I got to be honest, Tosh. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think it's absolutely lovely, and I wish the world was like that. And I wish every 5-year-old had a free unicorn, but they don't.
But I think,
No.
You see, I
think what Tosh said, and you flagged something, and it was very subtle, but I want to pick up on it in a really good way. You said you felt like a stone in your stomach. Now, if I'd have been in that situation, I would have felt the same stone and thought, well, it's a bad situation. I feel shit. No shit, Sherlock. Understanding I wouldn't have had then, which I'm beginning to get now, is that it's not just a response to a bad situation. It's guidance. It is an indicator, right? And if we want to feel better, we need to do something about that indicator. So it puts us at cause, if you like. It makes us responsible, which is quite a big pill to swallow. But then the benefits are clearly manifold. And I do agree, the more people that do that, very obviously, as an obvious outflow, we will have a kind of calmer world. So Russ is to be convinced. I'm totally with you. I'm
convinced. Tosh, don't misunderstand. Theoretically, totally get it. In the real world, I think it's a hell of a long way to go. Let me read a couple of points that have come up. This is from northeastern United States. Divorce has a systemic effect. Should be effect with an E. Come on. What's the copyright?
So does pedancy.
Yeah, we seldom shut up. We seldom consider the effect on those around us, but it's important to take every action feasible to make divorce an amicable endeavor. Yeah. Divorce often has a profound effect on children, totally, no matter the age of that child. And also, staying in a shitty marriage where you're arguing all the time has an even worse effect.
Yeah,
Now,
I
and
agree.
this
Hence
is, I know,
conscious uncoupling.
well, don't go Gwyneth Paltrow on me, please. This is a serious.
We've already had mention of the unicorns. We're not going to have Gwyneth.
Well, we're not having Gwyneth Paltrow and her bullshit on this show. Michael Verby in southern Spain. I know a couple that mutually agreed their marriage was over and amicably split everything. They're still friends. Great. I think that's a wonderful thing. Dave
So it
Sleep,
is
I had the
possible.
pleasure of seeing yesterday. Greetings, one and all. Apologies for the late arrival. He looked absolutely marvellous.
See, I don't know why you don't like the term conscious uncoupling, because to me that's just
Because
doing
it's
it in a
from
very
Gwyneth
adult-
Paltrow's a snake oil salesman. It's awful. It's just
But what's
nonsense.
wrong with people doing what the last comment just said? What is wrong
What?
with doing it like
What?
this, which is essentially what it is, just being adult about
Because
it?
it's
and making
rare.
sure the
Because
kids don't
one
get
with his
damaged as well,
children
like
involved.
Asa
Neil,
Don
Neil,
Brown says. What's wrong with that?
Neil, I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I'm a meat and potatoes guy. All right. When there's money involved and there's children involved and there's property involved, I think that niceness goes out the window.
It's not
Then I think you
niceness,
need to
it's
tell us.
kindness.
You need to tell us more, Tosh.
Okay, so I'm not here to convince Russ because you'll be convinced when you're convinced. But I feel that if this can just help one couple have a kind of divorce, then that's all that matters.
This
And
is
it's
a
that
wonderful
lovely.
thing. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
and
This is
and
a
you know
lovely
what?
comment, Tosh. This is lovely. This is from Liz Brewer. And through her, I met my late wife. When I divorced John Rendell, after 20 years, great marriage, we had one lawyer, and I said, what's yours is
Yeah.
yours, what's mine's mine. We remain good friends. And the whole divorce, people are going to be throwing up now, cost 500 quid. Liz Brewer,
Yeah.
you freaking legend.
Thank
So
you.
being
Lovely,
nice
Brewer.
ultimately is cheaper as well.
Of course it
And I
is.
just-
No, of
and I
course
just-
it is. I would love this to be the case.
So can I just say something?
Oh.
So my book is really about, it's that journey of self-actualization. It's about not
does that-
feeling
what does that mean?
disempowered. It's your
But what does that mean?
journey to reconnecting to yourself. So it's really about rediscovering who you are. And so often in divorces, people lose themselves, they forget who they are, they're disempowered because, they're not taking responsibility. So for me, divorce is an opportunity rather than staying in that sort of pit of angst, battle, victim, all of
Anger.
that stuff.
Anger,
Anger,
disappointment.
guilt,
Well, everything.
grief, shame,
Everything.
whatever it is.
Everything.
You can choose to do a little bit of personal development to work on yourself as well out of this, and you have a choice as to whether you allow your ex's words, thoughts, actions to affect you, and whether you react or whether you respond. You do the work on yourself. So out of your divorce comes a better you, rather than that person in 5 years' time, as we know, who's still angry and resentful and embittered, which ultimately impacts on the children. I have been that child who dreaded pickups and drop-offs, and it would start at Sunday lunchtime. And I just thought, I'm not going to have my children. And I think, we have a whole generation of children who are growing up with, angry parents. And it's about taking responsibility. Self-awareness, absolutely, Dave. And it's about taking responsibility for our part in the process. And, it begins with kindness of self. I'm not saying go and be kind. This book is not about being kind to your ex. It begins with you. When you are kind to yourself, there's a whole lot more, hopefully, self-care, a little bit of growing your awareness. And my book is the journey for you to do this, because when you feel better about yourself,
Tosh,
and you're kinder.
I get that.
And you knew that you had the choice as well. You were aware enough to know that there was a choice. I think many
Russ's.
It's that
Well, I've got something to add. It was
responsibility.
much better when
versus
we
the
were sitting
reaction.
next to each other. We didn't cut over each other. It was brilliant on Monday. I absolutely loved it. We're going to do more of it, Neil. It really, really loved it, as did the viewing figures. Here's the thing, Tosh. What
Yes.
is Tosh short for, by the way?
Natasha. There were just lots of Tashas at school, and I became Tosh around about the same time as Toshiba and all that stuff.
Okay, that's so sweet. Now, Tosh, here's my point.
Yeah.
let's take you out the equation and put Mrs. X and Mr. X. Okay,
Okay.
let's just take you out the equation because otherwise it gets too personal. Mrs. X decides that she's going to go the Tosh Britain route and be nice. How does she ensure she isn't steamrolled, lose everything that she's got, and come out of this with the clothes on her back? How does that work?
Okay, I'll tell you how it works because I have many clients come to see me about this. And it's about, because the thing is, you cannot control what your ex is going to do. You cannot do that. So you make sure you have a good team. You have a good lawyer who you trust, who's going to look after you. This kindness thing is not weakness. Kindness is clever because ultimately you are owning your part on the process. Thank you very much, Neil. And
I didn't catch what Neil said that you just thanked him for. What did you say, Neil? Didn't catch it.
He said nice.
Oh, nice.
And so you make sure you have a good financial advisor. You make sure you have a good lawyer. You have the people.
There's my point. So if you've got a good financial advisor, very smart, and a good lawyer, very smart,
and a divorce coach,
your husband says, "Well, I'm terribly sorry, Tosh. I mean, I pretend it's not your husband. I'm talking theoretically here." Says, "Fine, but this is my house, and you can get a little percentage of it, or whatever. But I work in the city, but I'm only going to give you £100 a week or some nonsense." How does the kindness work?
So the kindness is noticing when you are in your ex's or spouse's backyard and you're spending an inordinate amount of energy thinking about them, trying to second guess what they're doing. They're affecting the way you live your life, the way you bring up your children because you're angry, you're stressed, your body may be aching. And this is what, the kindness is all about. You trusting your professionals. So it's not going to take lawyers out of the system. It's not, but it's trusting in those people, and it's trusting yourself as well. It's trusting.
I think all these questions could be answered just by hold up your book again, Tosh.
Reading my book. It's hold up
your book. What's the subtext under kindness for conflict? What does that say?
It says a guide to separation and divorce, and this.
Where to buy a Magnum 357?
No. And the other bit?
We recommend that all going through a divorce and separation read this book. And this is by the co-directors of the CIC, Only Mums and Dads.
No, there's a line in it. Something it's about you, not about your ex.
Oh, your divorce is about you, not your ex. So that's my tagline.
That is true.
That's it. That's what.
Unless it's the other party who wants the divorce, of course. And you're
because whether we're getting on well with someone or not, we still can't or shouldn't be trying to control them. And you said, you do the personal development, you put yourself at cause, and you choose that ability to respond, that response ability, rather than the reaction. A reaction, we could say, is the old paradigm of fighting, screaming, shouting, guilt, blame, going to the battlefields. And you say it begins with us, with me, with you personally. We choose to make that decision. We choose to have that awareness that it's possible. And I imagine that, number one, well done for being so aware that you recognize that stone in your heart was a kind of if you like, a guidance saying, no, there's a better way. Many people wouldn't. I wouldn't have in the past years. And maybe it was brought on even more by the fact that you were that girl. You saw your parents go through it and you were determined somehow or other to find a new way. And lo and behold, you have.
Thank you.
Let's go to northeastern United States and read this. Paul Endicott, you're absolutely bang on, says Asa Don Brown. I'd include a number of other personality types, styles, and disorders. Yet, as a clinical psychologist, which Asa is, I've always believed that the process of divorce could prove an amicable experience.
Here's your evidence.
You're on drugs, Asa. But it often has to be encouraged by those around the individuals pursuing divorce. Really works when you go out with your mates.
Can I address this from Paul as well? Tosh's book may have a positive impact on pragmatic ears, but wasted on those narcissists that just won't get it. But that's the point, Paul. The narcissists don't have to get it.
It's not narcissists.
It's not about them. It's about us. It's not about them.
I don't think that's a comment that's valid because it's not about being narcissistic. It's about fighting for what you, in a very stressful, horrible, this is someone you once loved. This is someone you've had children with. right? It doesn't get much more emotional than that.
Which is why doing the work so you can clear those emotions, so you're not holding on to them, however many years in the future, is so important. No, narcissists won't, but for me, a really big part, I see a lot of accounts, a lot of people talking about narcissism, right? You like try to control a narcissist. Why would you give your energy to do that? And my one of the points, and I try to encourage with my clients, and I have a lot of clients that have been left for younger models and affairs, and do you know what? They are all on this. They are all on this self-empowered, self-kindness journey, and they are not in their backyard thinking about whatever their ex is going to do next. They are completely in their power. Like, I sort of talk about, people going through a divorce who choose to divorce in a kind way, no matter what racket is going on the other side, that they are their lighthouse. And narcissists may be those people. Narcissist is a very bandy term, and I don't like using it because, for me, something has to be, I don't know, seen by something like us, to be, what's the word, to be,
not sure where we're going with this.
Well, anyway, so if you're, it will come to me. But if you have somebody who is a narcissistic ex, that is what they are. But you focus on you. That is what you do.
You're never going to change them. If they are,
you're not.
You're not going to change them. It's a complete waste of time.
And you're not going to change people anyway, whether you're divorcing them or marrying them. You're not going to change people anyway, and that's
the great myth, isn't it? If I do this, if I do that, it'll change.
But to know that we have the choice to do that, the tools to do that, and the guidance to do that, and the support to do that, that's the most important thrust of your message, I would say.
It is. And ultimately, you have a choice, which is something that people don't feel they've had for, a long time.
And it is empowering. I mean, it sounds a bit heavy duty, owning your part and taking responsibility. But
very good point from Francois Pascal. Bonjour, Francois. Do you know what he says? He does not recognize common law wives. I don't know what constitutes a common law wife. Is there a legal definition, Tosh?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just going to say it's somebody who's been in a long-term partnership.
Living together? Living together?
Yeah, living together.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
So people do have the choice, which is, what was I saying? Yeah, it's a bit heavy responsibility, owning your part, but ultimately it's a journey of self-love, expansion, being more of who you were before, which ultimately is very empowering because it puts you in control regardless of what the other person's doing.
And it's putting your oxygen mask on.
Before you help other people.
We talk about that all the time. We're going to end on this comment from Dave. We're going to end on this comment from Dave Sleet. Not in Fife for once, down near London. Remembering that the parental teaching of children does not stop because there's a divorce. Absolutely. The way parents treat each other can shape the children's perception of how to treat their own partners. 100%.
Yeah.
I had a lovely definition of relationship yesterday, and I guess this is what people who've done this work will go on to the relationship they would like to be in. And relationship, I would argue we'd all want to be in with someone. It's basically, I can't remember the exact words, but it's along the line to be completely happy within yourself and completely at whole within yourself, if you like. And then you find someone else who's like that, like attracts like, and then you're two people who are happy being together happily because you're happy, not sort of needing something from the other one to be happy, which goes on an awful lot.
They're never going to fill in the missing pieces.
Where can we get your book, Tosh? Where can we get your book?
Where do we do that?
You can get my book on Amazon.
Right.
Yeah.
So my book is on Amazon, and it is, and I have my podcast, Divorce Goddess Podcast.
And what's the name of your podcast?
Hold it up again.
Divorce Goddess Podcast.
Divorce Goddess.
Get me.
I like that. That's great. And is that on?
Gotta be brave.
Is that on the normal platforms? That's great. Tosh,
And
it's been great. We're starting our new section in a second, so I'm going to say goodbye.
Tosh, you're really inspiring. Lots of love.
Us. Very interesting.
Nice to see you.
Very interesting. Good luck
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
Anytime. You're very welcome here. Bye-bye. Marvelous stuff. Right. This is something I'm very, very excited about, and I want to let this lady do the majority of the talking.
Yeah, I'm going to be quiet.
That is a brilliant plan, and I'm going to do likewise. Hattie Suvari really is a pioneer. A pioneer. I was introduced to her by the great Chantal Rickards, OBE, who you all love on a Friday at 12:30. We had a long meeting, and I thought, this is terrific. What a wonderful addition to the lineup on the Daily Show on Men's Radio Station, because my thinking is this: the law is a huge stressor. When you have legal problems, your stress levels can go through the roof. It can be as simple as a irritating next door neighbor, as complicated as a divorce, could be wills. There's a million different things. So every Wednesday at this time, we will be joined by the rather excellent Hattie Suvari. Hattie, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Russ. That was a rather grand entrance for me. Thank you. I don't know if I can live up to that now.
Nothing more than you deserve, Hattie, quite frankly. We've had a lot of correspondence, and, I'm very excited about it. Today's subject, leading beautifully on from Neil's guest of Tosh Britton, who I thought was excellent, and fought her corner admirably, is divorce.
Indeed. And I think, I'm so delighted to be here, and I just really want to get one particular message out to our listeners, to say that we really are going to try to deliver legal information, legal education, in a very simple, plain and English manner.
Yep.
You touched on something, and you said, the law it's very important, but it is a sort of, it's not a happy buy, is it? Most people think of the law when they're in trouble, or when there's something seriously wrong and they need help. So I hope that we can deliver tons and tons of legal knowledge in a way which I want to try and make it entertaining as well. Because it is.
I'm not fussed if you don't. I think the thing is that people look at this and they want the legalese, that because lawyers tend to make things as complicated as possible so they can drag it out as long as possible. The notion of you cutting through the nonsense and getting to the bone is key.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's to bring legal education to everyday people. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a legal issue, because some basic understanding of our laws could prevent legal issues. And also it can help you make better informed choices before you get to having any issues. I mean, it is. Yes. And the astonishing thing is, and I do feel astonished every time I say this, is we're not taught the law anywhere.
No.
Unless you electively choose to learn it. So I'm delighted to be able to shed some light, bust the myths, break the jargon up, and have a chat about topics that people hopefully can understand on a really simple level. Because
I'm looking forward to this slot as well. You were saying, sorry.
Thank you. The legal industry thrives on misery. Let's face it.
It's its fuel.
I mean,
it's fuel really, there.
You're touching on something that relatively recently happened to me, and it wasn't, terribly serious. Nothing I've gone to prison for, but I did nearly get myself into potential legal trouble, and it's because I did not know the law. It wasn't a question of deliberately breaking the law. I simply had no dealings with it before ever in my life. Plus, I was going through a really stressful situation, and learning complicated new legalese at a time when my mind was grieving and in an absolute mess is really, really difficult. So a bit of, as my dad, bless him, used to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. And I think teaching these basic legal principles, you're right, it could be preemptive, protective.
Absolutely.
What's the word I want? You know what I mean?
Prevention is better than cure.
Preventative. Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to bring tons of topics and subjects to this show. And we're starting with divorce because it is a massive topic. And actually, just some stats on it, 42% is the current divorce rate. And it's gone up massively since the pandemic.
Yes.
That's 40 to 50% of marriages ending in divorce. A lot. Yeah. Big number. The number one reason stated for divorce in the UK is unreasonable behaviour. And I'm sure to each and every one of us, unreasonable behaviour could be in lots of forms and shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Adultery responsible for around 14% of divorces.
So not huge, really.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, not in the great
No.
scheme of things. Yeah.
No, I agree, Russ. And I found this interesting. The average length of marriage currently in the UK is 11.9 years, which seems like a long time, but really isn't. I mean, my parents have been married for over 50.
Yeah. Train robbers only got 15.
I think you get less for murder, I think.
I think you do.
But according to statistics, and the average spend on legal fees to get a divorce is just over £14,000. It's a lot of money.
It's a huge amount of money. And of course, it comes at the worst time. Where if you're going to get a divorce, that means you're going to be looking for a new home and all the additional expenses. And boom, suddenly you're giving, the lawyers a great chunk, which is why what Tosh Britton was saying would be wonderful if it could be implemented, because you would save a fortune.
Well, actually, I just want to make one very, very quick point on your last conversation, because the term common law wife came up. And we will do an episode on this. We will do a show on this because quite simply, and I just want to put this out there, no such thing exists as common law husband and wife.
Precisely as Michael Verby in southern Spain pointed out a moment ago. No such thing as a common law wife, which is the answer
or
to
husband.
Or husband, which is the answer to Françoise Pascal's situation and her question. But I sympathise with Françoise because
I've done podcasts on it. I've done videos on it. The simple reality is, if you don't have a ring on it, you are not considered as common law anything. You must be married or in a civil partnership. So I said, it's very interesting because the unmarried couple is the fastest growing relationship type in the UK. But how many people know that if you're not married, you do not have the same rights as a married couple?
Few, I would imagine, but it's why they probably bring spurious cases thinking they've got right on their side, and they get told, which must be a horrible shock, sorry, you've been with him 20 years. Doesn't mean
it's a huge shock.
I was warned about the opposite. I lived with someone for a long time and I wanted to split up with them. And people said, be careful, it's going to count as your common law wife. So it wouldn't have done.
No, it wouldn't have done. And that person has, you have no rights over each other's assets that are not in your name, or that you don't have an agreement for, that you may have put together. And let's face it, not many couples say, oh, we're not married, but let's just draw up an agreement to deal with the car and the TV and the property is obviously the biggest one.
And the dog.
No one's getting
that's another episode.
No one is getting my dog. They will die first. Very, very, very interesting. You see, one of the things you're saying is almost 50% divorce rate in the UK, which exploded after the pandemic. And I guess you think, well, why the hell would I bother to get married? I mean, the odds are not looking good.
It's not a fashionable thing anymore. It's just you look back and historically it wasn't really the done thing to live with somebody and not be married. Now I think in society it really doesn't matter. In fact, I personally would encourage people to live together before they get married to make
before you buy.
Absolutely.
So what percentage did you say was the divorce rate?
Not a Ford Focus.
40 to 50%. It's not a Ford.
Wait, you say 42%. It's bad odds, but let's take the average, 45. But if I went to Vegas and I had a 55% chance of winning the jackpot, I'd say that's fairly good. No.
Well, yes, I get it. But I mean,
that's not really a legal point of view, though, is it? Sorry.
No, but it's a statistic, and I think that works. The divorce process. Now, I know this stuff could be as dry as toast, but one of the most important things to say about this, in April last year, so in April 22, the first changes to our divorce laws came into play after 50 years. And what that was, and two of the main changes was you no longer needed to state the reason why you wanted to get a divorce. Whereas before, on your divorce petition, you had to complete and say at least 5 reasons that a court had to accept was acceptable to get a divorce in order to grant you your divorce. You don't need to do that anymore, which I think is
Has
massive.
that removed, Hattie, has that removed, this is a huge question.
Blame.
The blame.
Yes, it has.
Is this the so-called quickie divorce? Is that what that means?
No, it's not a quickie divorce. There's no such thing as a quickie divorce, even though people think that that's the case, particularly when it comes to celebrities. Oh, they were able to do things quickly and they were able to get a quickie divorce because they were celebrities. That doesn't exist either. That's a big myth as well, right? But what it's done by taking out the need for parties to say, oh, she didn't care for me, he shouted, he's coercive, he's manipulating, whatever it may be, is it stopped that big fat argument that usually comes the minute the paperwork gets completed. Because what would happen, what would have happened is before April last year, one person would complete the divorce petition and it will land on the doorstep of the other person, and they would open it and say, look what he or she is saying about me. Yeah. And that would be the beginning of the divorce process.
And Hattie, I describe that as throwing a lighted rag onto a petrol can, because the situation's already really nasty. No, not nasty. Tense,
uncomfortable,
You're
stressful.
not in a good place. And boom, this arrives. You see it in black and white written down and you go nuts.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great thing that has come into change. The second massive change that's come to applying for a divorce is you can now jointly apply. Right?
Oh, okay.
So instead of one person being the applicant and almost making the other person feel a little bit disempowered because you're the respondent, you're the person being
You're on the
filed.
back foot. Do you feel that you're on the back foot with that? Look, I'm the respondent, not the plaintiff.
Yeah. And then you start hearing the conversations in your circles amongst friends or family saying, oh, she filed for divorce or he filed for divorce. So you can now jointly apply, which is actually quite it's quite a simple process online, really easy to do.
Wow.
For better or worse.
Did you know that, Neil? Neil, did you know that? I had no idea.
I didn't.
Wow.
No, the thing is, I can't speak with any experience on this. I've never been married, therefore I've never been divorced. So this is interesting, and it's all new to me as well.
Happy. That's why he's always happy.
So can divorce at its best, if that's the right way of putting it, be cheap, easy, and friendly?
Yes,
and
if the two parties involved are friendly, and it's as simple as that.
Can I Hattie, can I jump in? Neil, I want to jump in and say something about you, and it's important. Neil, no, it's a nice thing, but it's important.
Brace
and
yourself.
I think it resonates right through everything we do on Men's Radio Station. As Neil hasn't been married. He has a beautiful daughter. He absolutely adores his daughter, and the love between the daughter and the father is palpable. And when I speak to Neil, who's been a friend of mine for many years and a colleague, the love he has and the emotion is there for all to see.
Yeah, cherish it.
So I don't want people saying, oh, Neil, he's never been married, he doesn't know. No, there is no differential. All it is, as Hattie's already said, is that whoever is your daughter's mum, I've no idea.
I will say that me and the daughter's mum, thank you for that, Russ. Thank you.
No,
me and the daughter's mum
eventually realised I don't want it being demeaned.
No, but me and the daughter's mum eventually realised that Ashley would benefit a lot more if her parents weren't at each other's throats. And I remember Ashley saying herself years later that it was a privilege for her to have that. And she was really the important one in it all. Because if me and the mum didn't agree on anything apart from one thing, we both agreed that we loved Ashley. So,
well, that's a wonderful thing, and it's a very grown-up thing, and kind of goes back to what Tosh was saying as well. Anyway, there we go.
But it's rare. It's really rare that couples, whether married or not, and I see it all the time. Yeah, but I'm just saying it is rare that you can keep that civil relationship, and I think that a lot of people really miss that trick, if you like, where if you have children, you really need to default to what is best for the children. Is it actually best for the children for us to be at each other's throats? Is it best for the children if I tell my wife or the main carer for the child, you're not going to have the house, I don't care, go and sort yourself out with somewhere to live? what is best for the children. And I think not enough people who are separating, and I know we're talking particularly about divorce today, not enough people think about that. And I've seen that live in my law firm, where I have to say, well, hold on, when I've got sort of the typical divorce where the husband is saying, no, she's not going to have that 3-bedroom house. I don't give a damn. You know, I paid the mortgage and everything. And I said, well, where are the children going to live with the mother? The mother's a full-time carer to the children because the children are young. And then they'll say, well, and then it all starts, you see, the thinking, you get that thinking. But hats off to you, Neil, because staying civil on any terms, especially when there's a child involved, can be so challenging. It really can. And I know you probably know that firsthand.
It's
As long as the
I
children
think for
know
me,
that
the most key thing is not to make the children hostages.
Yes,
And
and
not-
use them as tools against
Oh,
your
use
partner.
them as
If there's
That's
one
the
thing-
one, isn't it?
if there's one thing that really winds me up, it's when
Yeah.
people use pawns, the children as pawns.
It's awful.
in
It's
their
absolutely
arguments.
horrible.
Because
It is awful.
anything,
It is awful.
horrible.
anything that me and Ashley's mum did has nothing to do with Ashley. How the hell could it be? She wasn't even born.
But Hattie, in your experience, there's two questions I know you've probably got, knowing you because you're so thorough, but I'd like to ask you a couple of questions that may be slightly off piste. Number one, in your experience, which is considerable, are you finding that children are still used as spies? What did mummy do? Who's she with? Did Uncle Fred come round? Are you finding that?
100%.
Ugh,
Yes,
revolting.
the children
It's
are being
revolting.
used, because I am seeing in cases where the children should not have a CAFCAS officer have to come across and come along and do a report, where the
Ugh.
children should not be dragged into a separate set of hearings to do with
Ugh.
access to the children and holidays for the children. You know, parties, understandably, tensions are high, but then they start saying, you're not going away with the children for Christmas, you're not having them for Easter, I'm taking them for summer, and they just get pulled and
Ugh.
pushed and pulled
Ghastly.
and pushed. And it
Absolutely
is ghastly. And, you know, some situations, you know, there's no smoke without fire, Russ, right? So
Yeah,
it's got to be
Sure. Well,
two parties are obviously tugging and pulling and each other. But one of the really important things, and I just want to bring us back to this process of divorce, for people to realize if they're separated or thinking of separating, going through a divorce or thinking of going through a divorce, is it's really, really important to understand there's two aspects to a divorce. Okay, there's two completely separate aspects. The first aspect is dissolving the marriage, which basically means you are no longer married. Easy. That's the easy bit. The second aspect, and the most difficult aspect of it, and the most important, because it will affect you for the rest of your life, is dividing the assets and liabilities of the marriage, dealing with who gets what, the finances of the marriage.
Steak knives. It's a family joke. Don't worry about it. Steak
Yes,
knives.
I get
family
it,
we're good.
and I get it. But so yes, so Neil's looking at us thinking, what was that about?
I'll tell you one day, Neil. Not now.
So it's really important that you focus on the finances of your marriage and who's going to get what, because it is going to affect you financially for the rest of your life, whether you like it or not.
Oh,
It's
sure.
going to affect your children
To
for
me,
the
it's
rest
like
of their
the
lives if you
gag.
have
What,
any.
you know, instead of getting married, why don't you just walk up to a total stranger in the house, just a stranger in the street, just give them your house.
No,
Saves a lot of
No,
time. Saves a lot
no.
of time and aggravation.
Neil, do you
Have
think that's
everything.
helpful?
I'll keep
Do
the
you think
steak
what
knife.
Russ is saying is helpful right now?
No,
No,
just think it's
I don't.
bad.
However, when I was having difficulties a couple of years ago, my mental health was down a bit. I was, as I said, there was almost nearly got myself because I didn't know the law in a bit of a legal tussle. Almost didn't happen yet.
That's
Luckily.
cool.
And I was so down. My attitude was kind of, I don't care anymore. Just take it all. I give up caring that much. So I wouldn't say that was helpful. I think you were being a bit funny and facetious, Russ. But at the same time,
not that facetious.
I have felt that way.
Yeah,
and it
I
is
think a lot of
possible in
people
high
just think,
stress
"Oh,
situations
sod
to feel
this."
that way.
Now, Hattie, this is coming in from Paul Claridge, but I was actually going to ask you the very same question. Is it true that courts tend to favour the
No.
mother when? Oh, can you expand?
Yes, of course. So I was going to mention that point in my myth busting section.
Oh, great.
Okay, so there's so many myths around the law that we could just talk about myths on every show, and we'll have a
Great.
full up show. So people think that the mother automatically gets the children, and we hear the term custody being bandied about a lot. Okay, she got custody, he got custody, I'm going to fight for custody. And then you get a lot of men, I've seen this firsthand, threatening vulnerable women that I'm going to tell social services, I'm going to tell the doctors, the police, and I'm going to take the children from you. So the default position is it's not true that the child automatically stays with the mother, right? The overriding principle always is what is best for the child or the children. Okay, and it's up to each parent if they say, for example, I don't think my child should spend more than 2 days with the other parent. They have to prove and show evidence why that is in the best interest of their child. For example, parents are arguing because they're separated or going through a divorce, and one says, no, I'm not letting you take them away for Christmas. These things end up in court, and you've got judges there having to decide whether these children should go away with one parent for Christmas or not. And the overriding question is, what is best for the child? Is it a good idea for that child to go away for Christmas? 9 times out of 10, it is. Because the argument between parties are not necessarily what's best for the children. It's because of their own challenges and tussles and disagreements.
It all seems rather petty to be asking the judge, can I take my child away for Christmas?
Neil, honestly, if you saw half of it, it is petty, and it's sad because they waste their money doing it, but most importantly, they stress out their children doing it, and they stress out each other doing it.
Because the kid gets to the mindset of this. Well, please correct me if I'm wrong. You're a legal person, and I was. But the kid gets that whatever they do, they're going to disappoint either mum or dad, whatever they do.
Yeah, because they're being,
they can't do right.
It's sad, and one of the things that actually
in the first place.
Exactly.
Say that again. I'm so sorry.
It shouldn't be on their shoulders in their first place. Anything their parents did is nothing to do with them. Like I said about my daughter earlier, they weren't born. How can it be to do with them?
It's not their fault.
No, exactly. And I think
fault.
The key thing that needs to be taken in consideration if children are being used as pawns against the other partner is the mental strain that has on a child.
Horrible.
Honestly, from the youngest child to early teens, it is so distressing for children to be pulled apart because of parents are splitting up and have split up. It is awful. It's not nice. And I think every time you think you're going to say no to your partner, unless there is a safety concern, a well-being concern, just stop and think, is that the right thing to do? Or am I just taking out my angst of the situation?
I've had conversations with people about this when they've confided in me. And I think sometimes the custody, and that's an interesting word for it, isn't it? Which we had a comment
here's
on
Dave Sleet's take on that, Neil. Custody relates to prisoners. Excellent.
It's actually an American term. It's actually we are kind of inherited it more from America, the term custody over children. You see it in films, don't you?
People would confide in me, and I remember thinking at the time the laws are draconian and cruel for all concerned, including the children. And from my point of view, unless there's a well-being concern, unless there's some kind of violence or abuse or something like that, that goes without saying. But apart from that, if the parent is loving on either side, I don't see any good reason why they shouldn't see the children.
Hattie, in your experience, which is huge,
there is none.
3 million downloads on your podcast, for example. So you've got a huge following, and we're thrilled you're here. It's also a lot of spite. In other words, Maureen, the wife, goes off with Tony, the plumber, and they want to go on holiday. And of course, the husband's furious that Tony, the plumber's stepped in. And even though they're probably just having a very nice holiday, he's so angry that he causes, he wants to put an absolute spanner in the works. Do you get that a lot?
You do, unfortunately. And I think it comes from many places. As a parent, there is this sometimes, especially when it's fresh, when the parties are separated, the divorce is not quite finalized, but you know that your partner's got a new partner,
Yes.
or you just, when it's kind of when the wounds are fresh. And I think when
raw.
Yes, and
Raw.
if you haven't moved on to another relationship, I think then it could become challenging to accept that your partner has, and then you think, well, I don't want my children exposed to a boyfriend or a girlfriend on the other side. And then that starts to become issues. But I mean, everybody's situation is unique, Russ, right? Everybody is,
of course.
Everyone's got their story and their reasons, and sometimes you might hear the most craziest situation, but when you go into it and you look at the reasons, you think, well, it's a bit crazy, but I do get it.
Yeah,
I do get it, and I think that when it comes to what's reasonable and what's not, I've been in a courtroom where I look at the judge and I think, God, I wouldn't like to be you today, because the decision that you have to make is not easy. Actually,
it's the judgment of Solomon. It's difficult, it's massively difficult.
Exactly. So
and you're dealing with human. You've got the law on the one hand,
human behavior.
And then you're dealing with human. I mean, if it's a speeding fine and you're doing 50 and a 20, it's not an emotional thing. You made a mistake. You're wrong. There's going to be a problem.
Yes.
But when there is love and emotion and the whole of human, that whole human complicated chemistry, very difficult to suddenly bring in accurate laws, isn't it? It's very hard because there's no wiggle room.
Well, this is it. But the law, I guess, will always default to itself to say, right, what's the process in these circumstances? So if you've got a mother saying, I'm not sending my children to the other parent, not doing it, don't care, he doesn't clean them enough, he doesn't, look after them well enough, he doesn't drop them off to club, he doesn't do their homework, that's not going to cut the mustard. A judge is very unlikely to say to you as a mother, well, the fact that he doesn't brush their teeth as well as you do, or assist them to, and dress them as well as you do, and perhaps he's 5 minutes late because of work commitments, then that's a good enough reason to say dad or the other parent can't have enough access to their child.
But if he was doing something reckless, like, I don't know, driving 120 miles an hour with them in the car, then I could understand that would be a good reason. But not because he doesn't brush their teeth,
Well, but this is it, Neil. People get very highly emotional during separation and even after. And, it's very common that one parent wants to dictate what the other parent does and how it's done. And when things don't go to the way they want it to, it becomes a problem. But I think if you're ever thinking of going to court to dispute a children's arrangements, i.e. how much access you're willing to agree with your partner or give to your partner or whatever it may be, just think of this question: what is in the best interest of that child? Is it really a problem that they didn't wear their best outfit when they went to the birthday party, or that dad didn't, really thoroughly get them all
brush their hair? And they put on the wrong clothes and they were 10 minutes
arguments,
late. I mean, get a life.
Well, this is it. But coming back to the divorce process itself, I would say focus, if you're thinking of it or going through it, focus on how we're going to divvy this up. And one of the most important things I think people need to think about is you were one as a marriage, right? In a unit as a married couple, you were one. Half of one will never equals one. So everybody's going to get less, right? And the mindset that people have is, well, I gave her or him the house. She rinsed me. She washed me out. I was left with nothing. Or she says he took his business that's turning over so much money. I'm left with, just a house. You're going to divide everything in the pot.
Yep.
Everyone's going to get less. And I think the moment you think, well, I'll get comfortable with that, then you can start accepting that your pot that you're going to be left with from the finances of the marriage is going to be less. So just look at how you can agree that. Because
it's when people think, no, I'm going to have exactly the same lifestyle that I have now, and I don't care, you could be running off, but I'm keeping my lifestyle. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because your money's being divided. Get over it.
Exactly.
You've got 25 seconds. I think we're going to have to leave this for next week. What I would love to ask you, we haven't got time now. what to look for in a good lawyer if you're going through this.
Oh,
What are the
good
good
God.
signs and what are the bad signs? But we've only
Oh.
got 15 seconds, so we can't do it. Hattie excelled my expectations, and I thought they were going to be fantastic, even more than I even imagined. I'm so excited about this. Neil's reaction to this has been just what I was hoping for.
It's
and
brilliant.
everybody-
And to answer your
yeah.
question, if you want a good lawyer, I would say go to getlegallyspeaking.com.
Oh
Go-
my
go-
good
go
God.
see-
well,
go see Hattie.
well, Red Bar Law is a law firm, but I would just say if you know, just look for somebody who does fixed fee, because fixed fees help you financially control what you're going to spend. But
And
next
there
week's
we
show,
have to leave it. I'm sorry, because otherwise we're going to have all sorts of technical issues. Hattie Suvari, Red Bar Law.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We'll see you
Lovely
next
to meet you,
Wednesday.
Hattie.
thank
And
you
Neil,
very much.
Neil
Thank
will
you.
be with you on Friday. I have to attend a funeral of somebody very dear
Oh, yes.
and special to me. So Neil will be with
Sorry
you
to
on
hear
Yes,
that.
I'm
Friday.
currently talking to someone called Pat Welsh, all about how he trains comedians to be confident on stage,
Brilliant.
and there's a mental health angle as well. Plus, we're
Okay.
talking to the lovely Chantal with the TV recommendations.
Of course. I'll be back on Monday. Take care. Hattie, thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.